Om Agyantimidandasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurun Milidam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I am very, very grateful and very honored to be with all of you today. Thank you for taking so much effort to come here to this distant place in the villages of India, which we have named it Govardhan. Govardhan is the name of a mountain in Vrindavan, which is considered a most sacred place. Govardhan means one who nourishes the senses, the earth, the cows, and all living beings. Can you hear better? Ready. Rural communities are not famous for technological efficiency, but we are trying. I'd like to share a story because part of the art of living within this world is to open our hearts and our ears to what nature and God is teaching us at every moment. Sometimes things that appear to be very ordinary, everyday observances, and we have a tendency to just overlook it. If we're seeking wisdom, those events can transform our life. Years ago, I was sitting on the bank of the river Ganga. I was all alone. It was about noontime. It was the summer, so no one was around. As I was looking down into the beautiful, beautiful current, I happened to see over my head was a hawk, a very large hawk. His wings were expanded. They were brown, golden, white. I saw his eyes. They were a very shiny, piercing yellow color. He was intently looking for something. He was hovering in circles lower and lower and lower until he was only a few meters above my head. And I saw how sharp his pointed beak was and how sharp his claws were. And I was wondering what he might do. Came down lower and lower till he was almost right over me. Suddenly, he dove headlong right into the Ganga. There was a skirmish. Water was splashing. He went underwater. A few seconds later, he emerged from the river with a fish about 1 foot in length, flapping desperately. As he was going a little higher, they were just a few meters from me, and I looked in the eyes of that fish. He was in complete bewilderment. Flapping, flapping, and flapping. And as he flapped, the claws of the hawk like a vice, went tighter and tighter. As I was examining the eyes of this fish, I was thinking that perhaps he was just going about his day. Maybe it was a girl, I don't know. I can't tell the difference. Swamis don't make such discriminations. But just going about his day like any other day. Probably swimming with his family and his friends, a fish, sometimes going upstream, downstream, across stream, playing, looking for food. Had no conception that at the least expected moment, the hawk of destiny would rip him right out of the life he knew. And I was thinking how much we are like that fish. We go about our life in our occupation, with our family, with our entertainment, whatever it may be, not knowing that this hawk of faith may be hovering right above us. We read about it in newspapers, we see it on television, we've experienced it in our own lives and in those who we love. Padam padam yad bipadam datesham. That no matter who we are, no matter what we have, the nature of this world is dukkhalaya mashashvatam. There are innumerable uncertainties that can come upon us. But then I was thinking, if that fish was swimming deeper in the river, the hawk could never touch it. And similarly, we are so easily affected by all the dualities and all the endless possibilities of changes that may come in our life. If the substance of our values, the substance of our fulfillment is superficial, or let us say shallow. And this is what Dharma, this is what spirituality and religion is meant to give us. A deep experience of life. Deep in the sense that we have a foundation that cannot be shaked, where we find a fulfillment that is beyond the ever-changing situations of this world. And Bhagavad Gita teaches us, when we act with great enthusiasm, determination, in this spirit, we become fearless, self-controlled, and compassionate. And then nothing that happens in this world can shake us. I was recently in England, and I heard the words of a very famous Englishman, William Shakespeare. He said, if you lose your money, you lose nothing. If you lose your health, you lose something. If you lose your values, you lose everything. In a cultured society, we learn to love people and use things. But in a society that has lost its culture and its values, the symptom is we love things and we use people to achieve them and to maintain them. One time Albert Einstein was speaking to another very, very famous physicist, scientist. And this scientist told Einstein his realization He said, in the Western world, we have produced an incredibly efficient, powerful ship or boat. But unfortunately, we do not have a compass. We do not have a compass. We're great at producing, but without a direction. What is the purpose of the ship? The purpose of a ship is not just to enjoy, it's to take us somewhere. Einstein also said that we cannot solve our present problems by using the same level of consciousness that caused those problems. The greatest need in this world is a change of consciousness. There factually is enough of everything for everyone. If only we're compassionate toward ourselves, our family, the people we work with, humanity, all living beings, and Mother Nature herself. That is the deficiency, the tendency to give up our values for something that is relatively cheap and cannot give real satisfaction. Martin Luther King, he said, the irony of our times is we have guided missiles and misguided men. We are endlessly being distracted by weapons of mass distraction. Human evolution, according to all the great philosophers throughout time, is to grow from the desperate need to get things to the satisfaction of giving and sharing. The Gita tells Yajna Achata Tristes Tatar Evi Prajana that what leaders do on every level of society, common people will follow. The leader of a family is the mother and father. The leader of business, the leader in politics, the leader in education, the leaders in agriculture. And believe it or not, even religious leaders. Unless we teach by our example, all of us, what are we really contributing to the world? It's like a little girl. I've seen this. I visited someone's house in America last summer, and there was this little girl who had all sorts of beautiful dress and ornaments, and she had every possible thing to play with. But she was miserable because her parents didn't have time to give her love. They were so busy, they just gave her things to keep her occupied while they did what they felt they had to do. She was pretty, she was beautiful, but she was miserable because all she really wanted is to love and to be loved. That's the very nature of happiness. Things can give some temporary satisfaction to the mind and to the senses, but things cannot touch the heart. And real fulfillment of love is a thing of the heart. There are only two things is that every living being has something in common. That essentially we are all looking for pleasure. The little insect, the bird in the sky, fish in the water, the animals in the forest, and every sector of human beings, rich, poor, black, white, red, yellow, brown, male, female, everyone is looking for pleasure. And everyone is trying to avoid pain, because pain interrupts pleasure. The Brahma Sutra tells us why we have this in common. Because essentially the living force within every living being is spiritual. That the living force that is seen through our eyes, hearing through our ears, tasting through our tongue, smelling through our nose, feeling through our flesh, thinking through our brains, loving through our hearts. Who is that? That witness. Who is that person without a living, beautiful body is a corpse that is either buried in the ground or burned by fire and swept into a river? What is the difference between a living body and a dead body? My Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, he was once speaking at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was appreciating the high level of study that they were being given the opportunity to access. But he explained how there needs to be a foundation of knowledge in which we build upon with our knowledge, with our skills, with our technologies, with our lives. To understand that we are not just these bodies. The body is like a car, and we are like the driver. We see through the windshield. We press the horn. We push the accelerator. No, just because you're not the car, it doesn't mean you neglect the car. You take proper care of the car. You give it its tune-ups, you give it its fuel. You take as excellent care as it is possible so that the automobile can serve its purpose. If you put gasoline in the car, it's nourished. But if the driver drinks gasoline, it's not going to be satisfied. But that's what civilization has come to. We're thinking that what is good for the body is good for the soul. We should do what's good for the body. We need to nourish the soul. Srila Prabhupada, my Gurudev, he would say that actually it was in New York in 1966. I think it was the New York Times was interviewing him. And it said, Swamiji, why have you come to our country? We already have our own religion and our own way of seeing things. He said, I have not come to convert. I have come to enlighten. To simply remind you what you have forgotten. The nature of who we really are. The nature of who everyone really is and our actual relationships with each other. The soul is eternal. Satchit Ananda, full of knowledge, full of bliss. The soul does not die with the body. Malayavam so jiva loke jiva buddha sanatana. The nature of the Atma, the living force, is that we're part of God. instrument of that love and grace of God in everything we do. Krishna tells in Gita, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yashkoshi tadasi, yat tapasyasi kote takurushu madarva. Whatever we do, we can do it either in a desperate need to fulfill our greed, or we can do it as an expression of the love that we have discovered within our own hearts, which is our true nature. In the Gita, there's an interesting dynamics. Duryodhana was on one side, Yudhishthira, Arjuna were on the other. When the war of Mahabharata began, from a physical perspective, they were doing the exact same things. They were organizing military phalanxes. They were riding on chariots. They were using their clubs. They were using their bows and their arrows. They were using everything they had and every bit of their energy. What was the difference between Arjuna and Duryodhana? Duryodhana was motivated by greed, arrogance, and envy. And Arjuna was motivated by a spirit of selfless service, without greed, arrogance, or envy. So some people think if you become too religious, you're going to lose your potency and your will to succeed. But was Arjuna less motivated than Duryodhana? Absolutely not. He was even more motivated than Duryodhana. Because love is a much greater power than greed. In this world, an example is a mother. A mother loves her child. She doesn't have a time card, 9 to 5, and then she does whatever she likes. She's on 24-hour call, and sometimes she's working 24 hours. Sometimes all night long. But to speak of the labor of having the child. Because there's love. This is what Gita teaches us. How to be dynamic, how to be fearless, with a focus of compassion. When I was traveling, I hitchhiked from London through Europe, through the Middle East, to India. I was in the Himalayas. I traveled to holy places in India. I came upon a verse later on. And when I heard that verse, I was thinking, that's it. This is what I have always been looking for. Would you like to hear the verse? Vidyavanaya sampane brahmani gavihastini sunichaya svapake chapandita samadarshi. What is knowledge? Who is a pundit or learned wise person? The Gita does not tell it's a person with many degrees or in particular posts within the hierarchy of society. A really wise person is one who sees every living being with equal vision. Whether one is a Brahmin or a priest, or an elephant, a cow, a dog, a chandala, a person who is rejected by the orthodoxy of society. Because we see that they're just different dresses of states of mind and dresses of particular types of bodies. But the living force within is sacred. When we understand our own self, then we can understand our relationship with everyone else on a spiritual level. Aham bija pradapina. there's real love. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur, my very, very honored friend, is remarkable outsider. This man had 10 children. He was a high court advocate during the British time in India and Bengal. He wrote so many books. He sang his songs every day. His wife was qualified just like him. He explained the testimony of somebody who loves God is natural compassion toward all living things. And this great treasure is within all of us. But our tendency is to get swept away by temptations, by fears, by anxieties, by aspirations. In order to really have a stable, productive quality of life, we require a strong foundation. This building, all the bricks were made from the earth of our land. They were not fired, but they were pressed. In fact, I made some of the bricks myself. If you like, you can also make bricks while you're here. We just condense it and then let it dry in the sun. And it's a traditional method where these bricks could last for hundreds of years. So there's nice sound system, nice wood bricks. There may be nice curtains. We may have in the future nice paintings. How many people have ever come to your home and said, this house has a wonderful foundation? Have you ever had that experience? But yet everything that they're complimenting you for is being sustained by the foundation. If the foundation crumbles, everything collapses. What is the foundation that gives us a quality life? It's based on truth. Krishna tells in Gita, Nashito Vidideva. Truth is that which does not change. That's our foundation. We are eternal souls. The Atma within us is forever. We're divine. We're a part of God. And our nature is to love and to serve. There's a traditional analogy in India of a good dog and a bad dog. It's parallel to the teachings of Gita. Krishna tells we have a divine nature and we have a demoniac nature, every one of us. This good dog is the propensities that we have to be arrogant, violent, angry, lusty, envious, greedy, and just full of illusion. That's the bad dog. And the good dog, our divine nature, has the qualities of humility, compassion, wisdom, contentment. Not contentment that makes us lazy, but contentment that drives us to be motivated with a real purpose for good. And these two dogs are always fighting. Have you ever had that experience? Sometimes that bad dog is howling to its dictations. And sometimes the good dog is can hardly hear it. Which of these dogs is going to encounter the other? The one that we choose to feed. And what is that feeding? Moment to moment, the choices that we make. This is humanity. This is culture. This is civilization. This is where values and fulfillment come in life. Krishna tells in Gita, we have to slash ignorance with the weapon of knowledge. Not just theoretically, but by the choices we make at every moment. Every time we give in to that bad dog, it becomes stronger and hungrier. And every time we neglect the good dog, it becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. Spiritual foundation comes through spiritual practices. In Mr. Muffet Love's example, I remember when his company was going through reorganization because of different laws, different rules that the Indian government made allowing foreign companies to come in, and whatever else may have happened. One close friend said that he knows other people going through similar situation. Some are suicidal. Some are in so much anguish, depressed. But he was coming every morning to our little ashram and chanting God's names and being with sadhus. And then he would go back to his family and go to work exactly on the time and would work like a warrior. He was so happy. He was so peaceful. And he was always thinking, no matter how much he was being pressurized and challenged, he was constantly thinking how he could serve others. His life was the same. I'm a Swami. I was learning from him. This is yoga. Not just sitting in meditation, but performing our meditation or chanting our names of God to give us that foundational strength by which we can move into the world with integrity. What is integrity? Integrity means, even in the face of temptation, that I can gain so much more. Or even in the face of fear, that I could lose so much. We never give up the sacredness of our values in life. Because our values are infinitely more valuable than any of the things that we can acquire or possess in this world. And that's the greatest need in the world. Leaders who have this type of integrity. And ultimately, the foundation to live in that integrity is inner fulfillment. May I tell you another animal story? My father, he's been in India for the last few weeks. He's 89 years old. He's just leaving today back for Chicago, where I was born and raised. The first time they came to nice dialogue with your parents. My mother and father were such loving, sweet, caring people. And I'd come home at night and they'd say, please, son, tell us, what did you do? And I would say, why do you want to know? Why do you always interfere with my life? That's the way teenagers can be. I was like that. Anyways, I came all the way to India. When I came back home, I was really a different person. I left America as a college student on a summer break for a summer vacation to Europe, which was supposed to be 2.5 months, and I came back years later as a hardcore sadhu. Wearing sadhu robes, I had long matted hair, they were expecting me, and my father and brother picked me up at the airport finally after years. Where was your baggage? And I showed them my little begging bowl. I said, this is my bag. And they understood something is different here. But anyways, in 1989, they met Mr. Desai, who's been us, dearest friends. And they asked him, what does our son do? He never tells us. And he said, you have to come to India to find out. So they came. It was incredible, my mother and my father. Just by being with the people of India, people who had values, people who had non-judgmental, compassionate, spiritual foundations. They never met anybody like that. If you go into my father's office, he's retired now, he had dozens and dozens and dozens of photographs and frames with many of the most famous politicians and entertainers and athletes that everybody knows. And he had so many friends. But he and my mother said, we had never met people with such love, with such goodness as the people of India. They were crying every night because they were so proud. I remember my father, when he was here, there was a Business Week magazine, the Indian edition. And it had a picture of Arvind Maffatwala and Rishikesh Maffatwala on the cover. And it said, the conscience of India's industry. My father saw that. And he was meeting them. He's living in a beautiful house with my mother. And he was asking, can I see your business? Because my father considered himself a very successful businessman. This was in 1989, before this reorganization. And they were always kind of ashamed of me. I'll give you a little example. Last year, I spoke at the HSBC Bank, and there was 900 bankers who came to my talk. And I just looked out at them. I had to smile. And I began my talk by just revealing my heart. I'm so grateful that you let me be here with you. You are among the greatest bankers in the world, working for one of the greatest banks in the world, and you're asking me to speak to you. And to be honest, I have not had a bank account or signed a single check since 1969. They looked at me like I was an alien from a distant universe. So you can imagine a father. They had nothing, no property, no money. Wear the same fashion every day. When he came to India, we was the Maffatwala house. And Arvind Maffatwala and my father are exactly the same age. Arvind Maffatwala said to my father, after my father saw just one of their textile plants, it was a whole city block big, all these machines, hundreds of these machines made in Europe, $60,000 each machine, thousands and thousands of workers. He went into his office building, and that night they're having dinner together. And are small people, but your son is great. That was culture shock for my father. He said, you are saying my son is great? He doesn't have anything. You have so much. And having all this stuff is not great. Living a life with God's values is great. Now, I'm not saying I'm like that, because I know my own weaknesses and everything else. But just that appreciation of what real values and real greatness is completely changed my mother and father's life. So one day we decided to take them sightseeing. So the person who was moderating this wonderful event, Radhanath, he took my mother, my father, and myself on a boat to Artha. This is 89. I haven't been there since. But as we're walking, we're going through some forest on an earthen path. And the first thing my mother and father experience is mosquitoes. And they looked at me and said, you brought us here. What are we going to do about these mosquitoes? Chant with me. So we kept walking, and somehow they chanted. I have to confess, as we chanted, the mosquitoes went away. So they were actually, look, it works. But the nature of this world is even when you succeed in something, danger is always there. Suddenly, a brown male monkey jumped right in front of my mother and grabbed her purse. She pulled and he pulled and she pulled and he pulled and she pulled and he pulled. And this monkey was pretty big. And he wanted that purse. He was angry. You see, monkeys, I've studied monkeys when I lived in the Himalayan forests. Rarely do they actually fight physically. Most of the time, they fight psychologically by showing their teeth, by making really nasty glances, by really horrific screams, by taking little leaps at each other. Usually one just runs away. So they're expert in psychology. So this monkey, my mother wouldn't let go of her purse. The reason? Both my mother and father, their passports were in 1989, the bureaucracy of India, trying to get new passports, trying to get new visas, trying to get new airline tickets, trying to get credit cards, canceled and reissued, and what to speak about the money that's gone forever. Everything. They were in total distress. The monkey was very happy. The nature of the world. One person's food is another person's poison. So they looked at me and said, "What are you going to do?" So I felt quite helpless because I couldn't climb that tree. So I closed my eyes and said a prayer to Krishna. Please save me. And I opened my eyes and I saw about over a block away in this forest on the side of the road was a person with a cart. It was a wheel push carts, and he had fruit on the cart. So I ran up to him, and I didn't speak much Hindi. He spoke Marathi actually, and he didn't speak English. So I just picked up a banana, just one banana. And I said, "Sadhu, bakshish, give me banana." He wanted 10 rupees for one banana. He said, 10 rupees. I said, "Bakshish, bakshish." He said, 10 rupees. It was an argument. I saw that he was getting angrier and angrier. So sometimes in emergency situations, we have to do things we don't usually do. I stole a banana. I just grabbed it and ran away. And he started chasing after me, crying out, 10 rupees, 10 rupees! And he started calling other fruit vendors to chase me also. You know what happened? As he was running after me, some monkeys started going to his fruit cart. I had to run back to fight off those monkeys. So I ran up to that tree. Meanwhile, my parents are in total anguish watching. What is our son doing? We're asking him to get our purse back, and he's going to get fruit to eat. I didn't know what was happening. So I went to that tree, and I aimed. I showed the monkey the fruit. Do you know what the monkey was doing when I showed him the fruit? I remember as clear as if it was yesterday. He was eating my father's American Express card. He's chewing on it, spitting it out. So he looked at the banana and kept chewing, and he had the purse open. I threw the banana, and I'm not a good thrower, so I was kind of a distance away from him. So in order to catch it, he had to really kind of jump a little, and he caught it. And as he caught it, the purse fell to the ground. And I quickly, it was kind of spilled all over the place. I quickly went back into it and closed it. And I brought it back to my mother and father. They looked at me and they said, "That was brilliant." To be honest with you, in my whole life, I never saw my mother and father so proud of me. My father was saying, "That was so intelligent. You outwitted a monkey." And my mother had tears in her eyes and she embraced me. She said, "I'm so proud of you." I said, "You see, if I went to college like you asked me to, I would have been able to get your first back." This comes from living in the jungle. Anyways, we asked Radhanath, we should go back after we saw the caves. And I remember my mother, she told me to do something that I totally forgot about. She took out a 50 rupee note, 1989, and she said, "Go pay the fruit vendor." came back to America some months later, everyone, all relatives, friends, and everyone who was acquainted with my parents, my brothers, they were all telling me how all they talk about is how you outwitted them. So it actually worked out really well. Sometimes crises are opportunities to accomplish something wonderful. Do you remember that incident of your life? If we have a strong spiritual foundation, we understand the lesson of this book. How do we give up our tendencies toward corruption, our tendencies toward envy and greed and arrogance? The mind is like a monkey. If we give the mind a higher satisfaction, then we can let go of the purse of all of our unwanted things, unwanted qualities. And what is the banana for our consciousness? It's that inner fulfillment. Krishna tells in Gita, one who rejoices within, one who is illumined within, is a person of true intelligence. And what is that within? It's our understanding our eternal nature, understanding our eternal natural love for Krishna or for God, and living in every aspect of our lives in that spirit. Not as in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a beautiful verse which is called the peace formula. Oktaram jagatapasam sarvalokas Ishvara. Suhritam sarvabhutanam gyatvam akshanti prachiti. If we want to find true peace within, we understand that God, Bhagavan, or Krishna, whatever our particular religion, that one supreme Father, Mother, in truth, is the proprietor of everything that exists, and is our most intimate, loving Father, Mother, and friend. And by utilizing our body, our mind, our skills, our intelligence, and whatever resources we have to live in harmony with what samsavir haritosha, what pleases God, that is where we find true inner peace. And that peace is so foundational that we can maintain our values, our integrity, and the quality of our happiness in life in the face of any sunny day or stormy day that may come before us. And factually, when we have that stability, we're much more effective when those storms come. Recently, this was just last year, I was invited to the Milk and Global Conference. How many of you have heard of Mike Milken? He was one of the most powerful investor kings within the world economy at one time. And somehow or another, whatever may have happened, he was just raising so much what's called junk bonds. He doesn't like that name for it. But he became extremely powerful, extremely wealthy. Then he went to jail. He says he was framed. My father, he's my father's hero. He says he was for the common person, giving them chances. I don't know. But anyways, then he was not only in jail, but he got prostate cancer. he started really evaluating his life. And he transformed. He started doing meditation, started studying spiritual books. And when he came out, he was as dynamic as ever before. And now he's very well known for his philanthropy and charity. So he has this global conference at the Beverly Hilton Hotels in Beverly Hills every year. And it attracts very, very top people in every aspect of society from all over the world. It's a 3-day conference. Just to get in, it costs, I think, $4,000. And they have a ceiling of 5,000 people. And it's always sold out. Top people, Congress, the Senate, governors, presidents of universities, CEOs and presidents of corporations from all over the world, they were there. They had such high-level seminars. So he invited me to speak there. He wanted me to do a morning meditation every day. Because he felt that we need to spiritualize these people. So I was doing my morning meditation and giving about an hour talk. And he insisted I come to a few seminars. One was probably a very high-profile seminar on leadership. So I was interested. You know, I'm a Swami living in Mumbai, in the jungles. And what are these big business people that are talking about in regard to leadership? And these are some of the top people in the world. It was in the ballroom of the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Are you interested in the story? It's better. There was about at least 2,000 people in this ballroom. In a very formal event. There was a dinner being served, a vegetarian dinner. Vegetarian. And there was, linen, tablecloths, beautiful cutlery, serving. It was very formal. People wearing tuxedos and suits and evening gowns. I'm little Swami sitting there. I was just observing. So on the panel, the moderator was Mike Duncan. The man is a genius of statistics. He meditates for about an hour every day in the morning. He's in his office by 4 o'clock in the morning every day. He does work for a couple hours, then he meditates for an hour, then he does some physical fitness, yoga stuff, and then he goes back to work till late at night, every day. Very disciplined. He had on this panel, one person was Steve Wynn. He's probably the most successful hotel person. He owns, I think, 4 casinos in Las Vegas, and Singapore, and so many other parts of the world. He's really a billionaire person. The other person was the CEO of Safeway Foods, which is one of the biggest food market chains in America. The other was the CEO, PhD scientist, a lady, and her company created more cures for cancer than any other institution in the history of humanity. I don't remember all the names. And the other was one of the top baseball managers in history. His name is Joe Torre. He was the manager for the New York Yankees. So Mike Duncan, they had this very beautiful computerized screen where they had there were many statistics and they had videos of each of these people's lives before they spoke. And he was asking them questions about leadership. each of them, what is the most fulfilling accomplishment that you had in your life? And before asking Joe Torre this, in the video shown, Joe Torre was a Hall of Fame baseball player. That means historically one of the greatest in history. And then he was made, when he got a little older, into a manager. And the New York Yankees were in the biggest slump in their history. They were really doing miserable. 10 years went by, they didn't make a single playoff. So the owner of the New York Yankees hired Joe Torre to be their new manager. And all the press in New York and all the people in New York were outraged. The television, the radio, the newspapers, the magazines were saying this is the biggest mistake. They're destroying our team. Joe Torre is a useless person. He has no capacity to lead. And he took the job. And in the next 10 years, with Joe Torre, they were in 6 World Series and they won 4. And he was voted as one of the top 5 baseball managers in history. Now, why is the Swami talking about this? Even I don't know, but I'm going to say it anyway. They asked, what was the most fulfilling accomplishment in your life? He looked over at this lady next to him and said, compared to this lady who cures people of cancer, I haven't done anything. Mike Milken said, well, you may say that, but a lot of us here are New York Yankees fans, and we feel that you have done tremendous things. And he asked how many of the 2,500 people there were New York Yankee fans. Over half of them raised their hands. And Joe Torre, he said, the most fulfilling accomplishment of my life. He said, let me explain. He said, do you know why I became such a good baseball player? He said, I was from the inner city of New York. And my father was alcoholic, violent, and abusive. Terrorized his mother. There was nothing but screaming, beating, and terror when he was home. Just as a little boy. He said he suffered so bad. The only thing he could do to escape the sufferings and release all the anguish within him was playing baseball. He said, I so intensely, I was taking shelter of baseball. It helped me forget my sufferings at home. And it helped me release when I hit that ball, all my anger and all my frustration and all my disappointment. He said, I felt at home totally useless. I had no value whatsoever. Do you know what it's like for a little boy to have no love? To feel that he's just a disturbance? He said, that's how I became such a great baseball player. He said, the most fulfilling thing I did in my life is not being Hall of Fame champion. It's not by being a great baseball manager and being like the king of New York City for 10 years. The greatest accomplishment is I established in inner city schools a foundation to help children from abusive families. We put psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors in these schools. And these little children who felt useless, deprived, depressed, and fearful, just like me, they are given a sense of their value. They are given a sense of morality. They are treated and they are given a future. And when I see those children smile, by far, that is the greatest fulfillment of my life. He got a standing ovation. I was looking presidents of biggest corporations, there were presidents of universities, there was governors and senators. They were all crying and clapping. They didn't do that for any of the other stuff that was being discussed. And I was thinking, whoever we are, it's that compassion that actually reaches people's hearts. Mr. Muffalo was saying when his father passed away, it wasn't that he was just a great business leader of industry. People actually loved him because of something that was beyond the business. Yes, he worked like a soldier in his business, but his compassion, his values, built on a spiritual foundation. And after he got the standing ovation, you know what he said? He said, actually, this whole foundation I'm telling you about, it was all my wife's idea. It wasn't my idea. I'm just assisting her. That's quite humble for a man to say that in front of all these people. Now, this is a relative thing, but it does give us a sense. What really is of value in life? Is it giving or taking? I have never seen anyone with inner fulfillment, no matter how high they climb on the ladder of whatever their field may be, or how much money they get. Mind, there's some satisfaction, but fulfillment comes through love, through compassion. And whoever and wherever we are, the higher we are, the more we can set that example for the world. According to the Gita, the more we accomplish, the higher our position, the more we acquire, the greater our responsibility to live with the foundation of Dharma. Interestingly, this really fascinated me. During that leadership conference, the person who was quoted more than anyone else in the history of the world was Mahatma Gandhi. Steve Wynn, he quoted Gandhi 3 times. That real leadership, this is what they were all speaking about. Real leadership is about service. A leader is one who serves. Mike Milken showed a graph. I don't remember the numbers. I can get them for you if you like. That to get the maximum volume of production out of an employee, if you don't give them money enough so that they feel very secure and protected, they're always going to be distracted. So this graph, years of professional study, it shows this is the level of a person's production and creativity. And if you give them enough that really make them satisfied, it's this level. Interestingly, no matter how much more you give them, you don't get more creative production. If it takes $200,000 or whatever to make them really comfortable and satisfied in life, if you give them 10 million, you're not going to get more from them. This was what the study said. But if you give them a sense of appreciation, if you give them a sense of affection for what they're doing, it zooms way, way beyond. You say affection motivates people, encouragement motivates people more than money at a certain point. And he said this is statistically proven over years. Because that's what ultimately ultimately everyone is looking for. The very end of the conference, Steve Wood, he said, my motto in business is the words of Mahatma Gandhi. There go my people. I have to catch up to them because I'm their leader. Leadership means not controller, but servant. And they ended the whole thing with another standing ovation by putting on the screen Mahatma Gandhi's words. Be the change you want to see in the world. I was expecting something different from big people like this. They're talking about values and service and compassion and Gandhi. This is on an ethical, moral basis, on a human basis. But the Bhagavad Gita teaches us something so much more powerful. How to create that foundation, how to create roots within the tree of our life based on eternal truth. Universal spiritual principles. When we chant God's names, chant this Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Rama, 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 Hare. Or whatever particular mantra or names that we believe. When we chant these mantras, we are reconnecting with that inner foundation, with those spiritual roots within ourselves. We're having a spiritual inner experience. It unfolds our real potential and reveals that inner fulfillment. That through our incredible efforts in this world, we can share that fulfillment. My beloved Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, he was in London. And another journalist challenged him. He said, Swamiji, why have you come to our country? He said something that really struck me. And it makes me so proud too. Srila Prabhupada said, for about 2 centuries, the British controlled India. And you exploited as much as you could of the wealth and the treasures of India and brought it to England. He said, but there's something that you forgot. You overlooked. The greatest treasure of India is in its culture, in its spiritual wisdom. In most religions of the world, and we respect and honor all of them, there's one revelation of God. In the Vedic perspective, it describes so many avatars. Ram, Krishna, the avatars of Vamana, Varaha, Narasimha. Over a span of vast amount of history. And it teaches universal, essential principles of Dharma that can transform the life without making one sectarian or hypocritical or egoistic. Of course, many people in India misunderstand and they do become hypocritical, envious, and sectarian. But there's such a great wealth there if we understand what it really is. He said that is the treasure of India. The culture of spiritual values that can change the world. Yes, today India is becoming a global power in industry, in economics, in technology, and in so many other fields. What the world needs the most from India is not only our gadgets, not only our wisdom in engineering and technology and science. That's all important. But India can give a foundation of wisdom and values. Srila Prabhupada said, you took from India all its treasures and brought it to England, but you forgot one. Its spiritual culture and values. He said, I have come to England to give you what you forgot to take. This is our responsibility. Whether we're swamis, or farmers, or engineers, or scientists, or business